Well, hello, good afternoon, good evening, good day, whatever it is, wherever you are. Welcome to another fun couple of hours with me, Scott Claus, doing 2D animation for CG Spectrum and the school that has everything for your CG computer graphic needs. Today I'm going to be working on part 3 of a cat take that I'm doing and talking a little bit about, hi Renato, hope everything's looking right, sounding right. I'm going to be talking a little bit about a lot of things, but starting with the cat take that I'm working on in progress. Today will be the last day of the actual animation I'm doing. Hi Nadia, thank you. And today I'm going to be doing some overlap and follow through stuff with the cat's whiskers, and then this thing will be ready for its cleanup pass. And depending on how things go, I might even be cleaning it up this week and have it ready for next week, or do some cleanup work during the stream, and so you can see how that comes together. But yes, if this is your first time, if you're out there watching this, my name is Scott Claus. I worked at Disney and DreamWorks and other places doing 2D animation and CG animation. And right now I'm the animation manager at CG Spectrum, overlooking things in the 2D and the 3D world as far as animation goes at CG Spectrum. Wonderful school, you should check it out if you haven't already. Again, cgspectrum.com. That's where you'll find anything you want to know about the classes that are offered, or you might find out about the streams that are offered that are different than mine, something different than I offer, which is animation based, but there's lots of really cool stuff. Unreal Engine stuff is coming out, and concept art's really awesome, watching people paint digitally and learning a thing or two. So whatever your interests are, check it out and find out what you can find out about CG Spectrum by going to the website. And I'm going to be referencing the website a little bit later. I want to talk a little bit more about the person who is going to be doing anime teaching for us. Just a little sneak preview. I mean, I've already talked about it before, but in case anyone is interested. Okay, it sounds like the video is freezing. Sometimes it takes a little while to get warmed up, I've noticed, but let me just check that out and make sure. Yeah, that's really attractive, isn't it, when it freezes on your face and you can't unfreeze it. Here, let me just shut a couple things down here, see if that helps out. And sometimes it's required that you just close a bunch of stuff. What I really want to do is show you guys a cool website, but I might not be able to, so just let me knock some of this stuff out and see if I can get you back up. And really, yes, it's 2D for Oscar. Yeah. All right, so let me just shut a couple things down. You guys can't see it, you might not be able to even hear it, but I'm shutting things down and trying to get this session to go at speed again. Sometimes this takes a minute, and we'll see if that helped out. And blah, 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 blah. Still going pretty choppy, isn't it? Sorry, guys. Let me try something else. And see if that helps. It's like bailing water on a ship. How much can you bail before you actually run completely out of resources? So, well, meanwhile, what I should be doing is making funny faces. How's that? Hold on. And let's see if that's going. Yeah, this is just not looking too good. Not impressed at all. Now you guys can see my crazy face. Okay. Let's just try a couple more things. I'm going to check this. Sorry guys, this is really boring, huh? But hopefully we can fix this up real quick. I'm gonna actually just stop. Oh wow, that looks a little better, huh? Maybe, hopefully, possibly. Yeah, a little better, not much. Right. Well, if this gets to be too bad, it's better, but it's still not good. If this doesn't get any better, I'm probably going to just cancel it because this is not pleasant to look at. So we'll give it just a little bit longer here, trying things, and see if that, oh, what? Yeah, sometimes it just takes a moment. Ooh, oh wow, look at that. See, I can see myself. Cool. It stopped for you. Thanks. Well, now I know that people are actually out there. That's awesome. Hey, thanks for chiming in. So yeah, now that we're back, just a reminder that you can chime in with the chat anytime, as long as what you say is nice and I don't have to censor you, then we're all good. So welcome. Now that we're actually up and running, welcome to the stream. And like I said, today I'm going to be talking about 2D animation, but I also do CG animation. Did it for many years, worked on a lot of really cool projects, and so I'm happy to talk about anything you like to talk about. We even sometimes talk about movies in this stream, because I'm a big movie fan. So patience is the thing. We're all patients waiting for you. Nice. Well, I appreciate that, Oscar, and thanks for coming back. It's nice to see you again. And I haven't lost you yet, huh? So yeah, those of you who've been here before, you know the drill. Like I said, I'm just going to keep drawing, and as I draw, I will continue to go on and on and on about what I'm doing, but I can also talk about anything that you're interested in. So please feel free to chime in with questions or topics that you're interested in talking about. Again, a lot of people are interested in how do I get a job, and I'm always happy to talk about that, how to put your portfolio together, how to get to networking and other related job topics. So just go ahead and hit me up if you have questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue to talk about the cat take I'm working on and the animation I'm going to do today, which is overlap and follow through. So hello, Kushal, if I'm saying that right. Welcome. Do I know anything about compositing? I know a thing or two about it, yeah. I mostly work with After Effects, but I worked with Shake right before it ended in around 2006 or so. So yeah, I'm not an expert. If you want that, then you probably want to go to Simon or one of the other awesome mentors who do streams, and they can tell you a little more about the technical details. But I know After Effects, and I composite my own stuff, and I composite animation stuff every now and then. So yeah. Can hit me up with a question if you have any. So today, this is the cat that I'm working on. It's not exactly like this. It's my interpretation of O'Malley the Alley Cat from Aristocats, which is an old Disney film. And I just always liked the design. I believe it's credited to Milk Call, but I always really liked this design. I mean, I grew up with it when I was a kid, so I just wanted to try something that's in the zone of things that I'm comfortable drawing. I've done other designs in previous streams. So this one, I'm trying to go for it and really do something that's Disney-esque, at least Disney from the early 70s. Seems like there's a renaissance. People are really into the scratchy, they call it the scratchy look of the late 60s, early 70s Disney style, where they were Xeroxing actual animators' lines assisted by assistants, and then turning the plastic sheets over and painting the other side and placing it on the background. We don't have to do that anymore. Now that we've got Toon Boom, we can actually use our actual drawings, and students in my classes, they draw their own stuff, the roughs, the cleanup, paint their own backgrounds, or modify others to use backgrounds, and create their own scenes. It's unimaginable to me that's possible. I mean, I do it now, but to think that this would be possible one day is really great. And this is why I always lead off by saying, those of you out there who are thinking about doing, sorry, face itches. Those of you who are thinking about doing your own projects, there is no better time than now. You have all the resources you need. You're just steps away from doing whatever it is you want to do as far as films, short films, cinematics for games, creating your own art. There has never been a better time. Some people are still resistant to use computers. They still like to draw. But now is a great time for you to try things and do things in ways that a lot of us never had when we were younger. And so you have no excuse left to do whatever it is that you want to do creatively, because it's all out there available. If you can't afford programs, there are a lot of freeware programs that you can use too. Oscar's asking, what's your software for animation? It is Toon Boom Harmony, and I'm going to show you some things about the program in just a moment when we get to it. But before we go any further, so I'm talking about a character take today. I've mentioned this in past streams in case anyone was there for that. I love the pencil, but you got your XP pen tablet. That's wonderful. That's awesome. It's really cool, Oscar. I'm glad you got a good setup. So we're talking about character takes today. In just a minute, I'll show you the work in progress, but let's first just kind of a refresher on takes, character takes. So in the old days of acting, there was vaudeville, and vaudeville was a broad theatrical way of acting that was for people who went to the theater, which is pretty much everybody. We're talking the old days. And they came up with a sort of a very broad way of acting. And part of that was if you're going to change emotions, then you would be facing the camera like this, and then you turn and you make a big show out of going, oh, what's over there, or what's over there, or what's right in front of me. And that would be a character take. It's also, you could do a take two. It's when you turn and you look twice. And I could do it to the camera. It's like, what? You know, you've undoubtedly seen it in cartoons without knowing what it is, if you've ever watched cartoons, that is. And so Disney cartoons, the early stuff, early Warner Brothers, they pioneered this as a way of conveying a change of attitude for a character. So change in their face, change in their body language, change in their emotional state. And one of the pioneers of this was Tex Avery. Tex Avery did not actually do this frame from Tom and Jerry, to the best of my knowledge, but you've seen this before, and the person who invented it, or not so much invented it, but he's known for this sort of thing, was Tex Avery. Eyes popping out of their head, jaw dropping on the floor, and just over-exaggerated expressions that represent emotional changes. So Tex Avery was one of them. Bob Clampett was another. If you have any interest in this sort of thing at all, you should go back to the source and check it out. There are tons of examples of this sort of thing, with Tex Avery and Bob Clampett being the pioneers, the ones that really started the ball rolling for over-exaggerated takes. And out of that came Ren and Stimpy. Out of that came Roger Rabbit first, which was a huge success that sort of harkened back to the old days of character animation takes. In the late 80s, this film came out and reminded a lot of us of something we'd all forgotten, which was the over-exaggerated take. So Roger Rabbit brought the excessive take back into fashion again. And then, as I'm starting to say, then Ren and Stimpy took the ball and ran with it and pretty much pushed it as far as it's possible to go. So anything you see nowadays is likely a copy of those kind of premier elements. Those were the things that got the take started. Nowadays, we're actually kind of, well, some people are actually going back and reassessing takes and coming up with things that are more subtle, which is basically what I wanted to do for mine. It's much easier to do an over-exaggerated take like the type that you see in Roger Rabbit, or you see in Bob Clampett and Tex Avery. It just requires a few drawings, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment. But to do something a little more subtle, a little more realistic, which is where we're leaning in terms of animation these days, that takes a little more work. So I'm going to now share my screen with you, And then first of all, just let you see that this is what I started with O'Malley, the Alley Cat. I just was looking at drawings online and trying to get a sense for this character, which is a really important thing to do. And then out of that comes the scene that I'm currently working on, which I'll now share with you. So Oscar, you got the Eric Goldberg character book crash course. It's really awesome. Yeah, no, that Eric Goldberg is just wonderful, and the book is really wonderful, and it's full of cool drawings, and I'm always referencing that when I'm trying my own work. And so before I show what I'm doing, basically the take comes down to this, which is you have a character who's in its state, its original state. You always just draw something with a circle, it just makes it easier, but you have a character who's just in a state that's normal. So you picture somebody happy, and then they see something, at least in my case, they're looking at something, and then based on that, they do an anticipation, which is a squish, and then an over-exaggeration, which is a stretch, and then usually something like another squish that gets them back down again, followed by a settle into their new state that they're in. So just real basic. So it's here was the original state, here's the other original state, and then this was seeing the object that's going to make the character. I'm just going to shut this off. And seeing the thing that's going to make the character react, which is in my case the character I figured saw a dog or something, and then there's an anticipation, there's an exaggeration, there's a recovery follow-through, overlap follow-through, and then there's a final take, final resting state again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 basic moves that represent a character take. And it's really as simple as that. If it was as simple as that, everyone would do it, and that would be the end of it, and we'd all be master animators, and wouldn't that be nice? And that's just not the case. It's a lot more complicated than that, as you'll see, but that's where it starts. It starts with those simple poses. So anyway, now that I've demonstrated that a little bit, let's see. We'll take a look at my actual scene. Got another question. The foundation course, beginners courses, you get confused. Yeah. Well, the foundation course, sorry, we interrupt this lesson to talk a little bit about CG Spectrum. The foundation courses are basically a chance for you to get a taste of something. So for example, you get a taste of modeling and CG animation, and then after that you have the option to go into an actual program, or not actual program, but you get to continue on and go in one specific direction. So rather than continuing on with getting a general overview, you have the opportunity to specialize in something. So I think that's one of the main benefits of the foundations. You get a taste of a lot. And so that's, if you're interested in getting a sampling and you're not sure you want to commit to either or at this point, then you might check out a foundation course. But the other way you can do it is you go into an intro course, and then you have the option to just finish there, or you can continue on. And if you go through the diploma and advanced courses, then you're getting some serious skills. And I mean, everything that you do at CG Spectrum, you're getting skills trained by, at the risk of sounding like an infomercial, you're getting trained by people in the business, some of the best in the biz. But you have different tiers that you can invest in if that's what you want to do. So hopefully that answers your question. It is sometimes confusing, but really all you have to think of is that there's introduction stuff, there's foundation introduction stuff, and then there are full courses. That's the gist of it. There also happen to be some trial courses that are available, but I'll leave that one alone for now. You can go to the website if you want to see. Oh, and I might as well plug this now, just before we get too much further into it. I wanted to plug this earlier, but I'm going to plug it now. This is, I've been talking about this a lot, but now I want to give you guys an actual link that talks about our, sorry, I'm clacking away with my typewriter, but you'll see it's worth it, that talks about our new development, which is we have someone who's teaching anime style drawing in our 2D in our animation program. Basically, it's someone that we've recruited to do the 2D animation program, but with a leaning towards anime. And so she works in anime in Tokyo. I've talked about this before. That's why I'm kind of just going over it kind of quickly. But anyway, I just want to put this up real quick here, and I'll link to it so you can check it out. It's really cool, and you should check it out if you have any interest whatsoever in anime or something. If you want to maybe do that as a job, or if you wanted to do it just for fun, we have someone, we're very pleased to have someone who works in the business and is going to be teaching our course, but has this as an influence. So there's this wonderful article that you can read. It's a blog, talks a lot about the business in Tokyo, talks a lot about just our artist and her experiences, and there's some cool stills and cool things that you can check out. So that's in the link that I've given you, or you can just go to the CG Spectrum blog, and then that will show you. It's not awesome. It's really nice. So if you're interested in the topic at all, if you want to know a little bit about what it's like to work at a studio on anime productions in Tokyo, how you might, how somebody ended up working there, if you're just interested in the topic, or if you're interested in someday being able to do something like that yourself, head on over to the website and check it out. It's a really fun article. I read it the other day for the first time, and it was just like, oh wow, this is cool. It's really exciting, and I'm really happy that we have this happening. So leave that up just for a second, but you have the link. And I got another comment here. Let's see. So let's see. True. There comes a time it needs to be precise to get the correct effect of the take right. Yes, yeah. So there's a lot more to a character take than just poses. There's a lot more to animation than just poses. But we'll take a look at that now. Anyway, I'll bring this back later. But we've got the link. You can check it out at your leisure. And this is the latest development in the 2D animation department. All right, so now let's take a look at the take in progress. So I've gone through this before, but and so I'll just quickly go through this. But for anyone who's interested, for a review before I get on with it, we started with the keys, and so if I just go through the keys, you can see that I had the character start off in a sort of a neutral pose, just minding its own business, and then moved into a pose where it's like, oh, what's happening over there? Like, assume there's a dog or something that's scary, and then squishes down, squishes up, and then settles back down into a final pose that looks like this. So I'll just go a little faster. You can tell this is rough stuff. This is not, well, it's tied down at this point, but there's still some kind of ugly drawings in there, which I'll be cleaning up as we go. But mostly I just wanted to show you that the keys are there. The keys exist, and those are the elemental poses I just showed you that you would use if you were trying to do your own character take. It's just a neutral pose, a reaction, and then squash and stretch, extreme, up, and then settle back down into the final pose. Then I added some breakdowns, so I'll include those now. You can see that if I just click through them. So I added a little bit more to describe the floppiness of the ears, and I added some stuff to concentrate on the arms, which are not moving at the same time as the rest of the body on purpose. And then after that, I went through and I did rough in betweens. It's just what I've done for the last couple weeks. And if we play it, it looks like this. So this is O'Malley theoretically looking, seeing that there's something scary or something dangerous over in the corner, and going, oh, that's not good. So again, a little more subtle take, but there's no reason not to play around with more exaggerated takes and push it even further. But I was trying to do something that's a little less pushed, something a little more subtle, a little more Disney-like, where they're concentrating on trying to make a real character. Thanks, Oscar. Appreciate it. So today, now that I've gotten all that done, now I'm going to concentrate on doing some overlap and follow through by creating whiskers. So I'm going to create, this is sort of like, it's an opportunity to talk about about Toon Boom a little bit, which I sometimes neglect to do. But the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to actually create another layer and then do the whiskers on that separate layer so I don't mess up the drawing I already have. In fact, I'm just going to lock that layer now so that, well, I can't see it. I'm going to lock the layer later, but I'll just build another layer and then animate the whiskers on that layer, and so I don't mess up the original drawing. So I'll just go in here, add another layer. You have two options when you're creating a layer in Toon Boom. You can use the bitmap layer, which is what I'm going to use, which gives you that soft, scratchy pencil line that you can see on my screen. Or you can do the vector layer, which is what I've used in the past for cleanup lines, and which I'll use again for cleanup lines when I get to it, probably next week. Well, definitely next week I'll be doing the cleanup stuff. So I'm just going to choose bitmap, and I'm going to call this whiskers, and add and close, and now you can see that I have another layer here in my timeline that's blank. And all I have to do to start off is I just have to draw the very first pose, which is just the cat sitting there looking. Now, rather than just guessing where the whiskers should be or just saying, oh, I'm just going to put them wherever, I want to look at the cat and think about, well, okay, O'Malley looks like has 4 whiskers, at least in this one. I'm not sure that's a legitimate still from the movie. Let's look at this. There's 4 whiskers there. They look like they're all kind of the same length, fanned out a little bit past his face, so they're nice and long, which will be fun to make them bounce around, overlap, and follow through. Looks like the second one from the bottom might be the longer one. It's not going to be too crucial. It's as long as they sort of have a fan effect, it's going to be fine, and nobody's going to be judging me on this anyway. So I'm going to look for a fan effect on this and create the whiskers based on those images. And most likely what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll fix all this up later. But just so I can show you how I would do it, at least I can get a start with this. And again, if anybody's interested in how you animate this stuff, how I originally animated the cat in the first place, or interested in the technical side of Toon Boom, I'll be working on this project for that. So first things first, I'm using bitmap, so I choose the paintbrush. The paintbrush is right up here in the corner. It's just a tool like anything else. And then I decide how big it is, how big the brush is. So I'm on frame 1. And if I just draw a whisker, it actually looks pretty good. That's probably good enough. So 12 looks like it's good. Flow is right underneath. So I'm looking at tools over here on the side of the screen. I chose the maximum size, which is 12, and now I choose the flow. I'm going to set it really high, and that means that it's going to have a nice smooth line. Even if I go like that, it's still going to look really clean because I've got the flow up really high. So and then because I've got this particular brush that I've chosen, which is, I don't remember what it was, it is a soft lead, then I have the ability to get in there and get really thick if I press hard, and really light, and really taper off, which is how we would draw with pencils. And that'll work just fine for the whiskers I'm going to be drawing. So the first thing I'll do is I will draw the whiskers on the first frame, which is kind of the hero frame for this scene, the one that has probably the most on-model drawing of the cat. It still needs a little work. It's tough to draw these guys, just so you guys know. It's not easy to draw Disney characters. Even after doing it for several years, I still don't know that I've ever mastered it and always worked at it. And in the 90s, we weren't really doing the classical kind of Milt's call style anyway. We'd come up with a different, I say we, but they had come up with another style. So this classic Disney style is it's deceptively difficult. Question, heard about the new Buzz Lightyear Disney Plus series with Chris Evans? I did hear about that. I don't know much about it, but I did hear about it. So anybody who's curious, what am I doing on screen right now other than just simply rotating this image? Well, this is a feature for Toon Boom. Sorry, I don't want to make you dizzy, but Toon Boom has the ability to rotate your disc. This, I always talk about this, said it several times, but in case anyone's curious, I'll point this out. This is icon represents a disc. The circle at the top was where you'd stick your finger in and you could rotate your disc on your light table. The square underneath it was a clear plate of frosted glass or clear glass, usually frosted glass, with a light under it so that you could see the light coming up through the bottom of your desk. Underneath that was a ruler that had increments marked on it so that you could use that if you needed to. I never did, but Cameron used it. And then there was a single peg, round peg usually, and then 2 square pegs on the outside of that, and those were the registration point for paper. So you had animation paper that would be registered, punched in a specific way, so that it would sit on a disc like this, and then it would also sit on those same exact pegs when they put it underneath the camera. No digital back then. It was all done analog, shooting 1 frame at a time with analog film. Film is very expensive, is, and so everything had to be lined up nicely. And then you would be able to rotate the disc in whatever angle you're most comfortable drawing. I tend to lean up towards the right, and so towards the right like this. And so I would always rotate my discs as I'm about to right now so that I can draw at an angle that's more comfortable for me, which is this. And Oscar, you had one of those with peg bars. Great. They're not cheap. They were, maybe they are now, but maybe they're more expensive now, but boy, they were expensive. I have one. I've never let it go for that very reason, because I just can't believe how expensive they are. And so it's, if you've got one, treasure it, hang on to it, because those things are worth money. In my situation, I probably won't be using it again anytime soon, and I'll probably end up selling it. I have a portable setup, portable desk with a full disc on it for 16 field paper. But the likelihood that I'll ever use that again in my lifetime is getting to be slim and none. And so I'll probably keep it just because out of sentiment, as long as I have the room for it. But it's interesting that I just used to depend on those things for everything, and now don't really think about it anymore. Any more than I think of animation paint. We used to have to go to Cartoon Color, which was in south of Hollywood, and they would be the main source for the special kind of paint you needed for animation cells, and it stunk like crazy, and it molded really fast, and it smelled even worse once it molded. A little bit of trivia, and it was incredibly expensive, and it was just, that's all we had, so we just did it. But now we don't have to do that anymore. Some people would prefer to do that, but we don't have to do that anymore. We have options. So Oscar says, I have a steady hand with the whiskers. Years and years of practice. I always talk about cleanup. What we would do is we would grind away into the paper. So let's say I'm going to do a computer line, let's say I'm going to try and do a clean line with this cat and do a cleanup drawing, right? So what we'd do is, often as not, we'd go in and we'd feather using a mechanical pencil like I'm doing right now, and that's how we'd get this really nice vector line long before there were vector computers. So we'd do that, feather it in, grind it into the paper, the actual, it's real thick, sturdy paper, and then we'd knock it down with an eraser, and using the guide that we had in the paper, because we'd ground it in so hard, we could just go in and just do a nice line. That actually wasn't that nice, but you could do a nice line fairly easily because you already had a groove inside the paper. Not easy to do now. It's like drawing on glass to draw on a tablet. But fortunately, we have these tools, like I was talking about over here, Flow. Probably the reason the whiskers look as nice, if they look nice, it's probably because of the flow. If I turn the flow way down, let's see if I can do that again. Oh, well, there you go. That's what the flow does. So yeah, my line still looks nice, I guess. I guess I have to take credit for it, so thanks. Anyway, it does take practice. Yes, so think about it this way, since you brought it up. And I'm just going to keep on going with the cat. Now that I've done the first frame, I'm going to now do the last frame. And I'm actually going to copy and paste what I've got here and then manipulate that for the last frame. Rather than trying to draw it over and over again, I can just copy and paste. Something we couldn't do in the old analog days, very easily anyway. And talk about, well, the reason I might have a steady hand or still know how to do this after all these years is because I did it all day, every day, for years and years and years for Disney and DreamWorks. That was just what we did. And they paid us to do it. It was our job. So we got very good at doing it after doing it all day, every day, and sometimes on weekends. We worked Saturdays. And after doing it for hours and hours and hours, you will find anything that you do, you'll probably get better at it. And so, yeah, I attribute, if I still have a steady hand all these years later, it's probably because of that. Yeah, I'm pretty out of practice, but it's funny, every time I have drawn on analog paper in recent years, in the last 7 years or so, I've did some commission artwork and things, it comes right back. And that was what they were paying us the big bucks for. And it did pay well. It paid really well to be a cleanup artist in the 90s and 2000s. And it was a wonderful job. And I don't really know how the cleanup department works nowadays. I don't know if they have a specific department designated. I know in Tokyo, I mean in the anime world, that they still are using paper. So they would have the same situation where you have rough and then you have cleanup. And I don't know how they handle things like that on, say, Klaus, for example. I probably should look into that. That's a good thing to know. But I do know for sure that the more you do it, the better you get at it. And when you do it 8 to 10 hours a day, every day, 5 to 6 days a week, eventually you do start to get good at it. I take pride in saying that I was actually one of the better ones. I was in demand. Not to say that there were worse and better, but I was definitely in demand. It was something I really loved. And as a result, I got really good at it. And I practiced it even when I wasn't working. And I would have a lot of demand for my drawings from animators or other people who would just say, hey, can you do one of those cleanup drawings for me because they look really cool. Again, this is before we had computer art, before Illustrator or anything else. Photoshop even. Photoshop was around, but it just wasn't a practical tool for the kind of stuff we were doing. So they needed someone who could draw like a computer, and I was capable of doing that. So every now and then someone would ask me for a favor, and I would do a specific drawing of, I don't know, I remember doing one of Sinbad's friend Proteus from the movie Sinbad for the lead animator on that show. And he was delighted to have a really nice cleanup drawing. And I did it for him just because I felt like it. People would ask me all the time to do drawings, and I have some advice. So for those of you out there right now who are still trying to make your way and still trying to maybe get into the business or become professional artists, understand that there's a certain period of time when you can and maybe even should give your work away because it's the only way to be seen. For example, going on websites and leaving your artwork there and just saying, well, this is something I did. At a certain point, you need to stop doing that and understand that your work is worth something, and it's how you're going to make your money. and it's as valuable as you make it. And so if you work really, really hard on something and people love it, then you owe it to yourself to make people pay something for it, and or barter something, or in some way, shape, or form, you need to make it clear that your work is worth something. And if people want your work, you're not just going to give it away. At first, you kind of have to when you're making a name for yourself, but eventually that has to change, and you have to, offer prints or something rather than just, oh yeah, I'll do some free work for you. I can't stress it enough, because most of us artist types are very sincere and very friendly, and we want, to succeed. We want approval, and can sometimes be taken advantage of. Now, who would do that? Who would take advantage of an artist, right? But it's true. And so at a certain point, you stop giving away freebies, and you start being a little more inclined to charge for your work and make sure that people know that your work has value, and it's what you do. And it's not something that everybody can do, and so it's worth something, and you need to prove that. So anyway, getting off my soapbox, but yes, that is the important thing for you to learn, is not to give your work away. At least after you kind of made a name for yourself, you have to take care of yourself, and you have to prove to people that your work is valuable and not to be taken lightly. So yeah, check out your work. Not that else you'll be the right judge. Sorry, I'm reading your message, Oscar. When you love something so much, you automatically listen to others. Yeah, it's a good point too. Is sometimes perhaps our work isn't. Just didn't set a key. Sometimes what you'll find is that your passion will save the day. You'll find, as I did the first time that I was in the business, and when I was just getting started in the business, I found that people appreciated my passion, and they saw in me something that was going to develop. I talked last week at length about famous animator Dale Bear, and how he gave me a chance. He gave me my first chance in the industry. And I'm convinced it's because he saw my passion. It certainly wasn't my talent. I did this really horrific short film. And I mean, it's a funny film. I don't regret it. I don't want to make apologies for it, but he saw that, and then I talked to him later, and he was like, yep, that was something. That was pretty out there. But because I showed passion for what I was doing, he actually ended up saying, no, I'm going to help you, I'm going to support you, and we'll see about getting you into the studio and doing what you love to do. So I really owe Dale Bear a lot for taking a chance on me when all I really did have was passion. And so yeah, sometimes passion will actually be the thing that gets you where you wanted to go. And then other times it's heartbreaking, but I see people who have a lot of passion, but they really need to invest and spend the time and spend the money, if that's what it, if money is part of the issue, get Toon Boom or something that costs money, and work at their craft before you start trying to get a job or trying to share your work too much. Because I did that early on. I tried to just get hired without actually having done my homework, and as a result, really regretted it. Really wished I hadn't wasted as much time as I did doing things, putting things out there that weren't ready. So you need to be respectful, and when you get somebody's time and say, hey, I've got something to show, really have something to show, it's important to do that. So I'm surprised there are not a lot of 3D CG animation TV series content. Yeah, for Drawn Skull, it's not cheap. And one of the things that any studio, any concern that wants to create something will face is assets. Now, what I'm doing right now with this 2D animation, these are assets I'm building. I'm building them right in front of you, but But all they have to do is draw them, and then they're done. Draw them, paint them, and then that's it. With a CG animation program, you have to build environments, you have to build character rigs. I can't stress how hard it is to build a character rig. If you've ever tried it, you know what I'm talking about. When I've taught CG animation classes, the first thing they'll ask is, hey, is this a class where I get to design and texture and rig and build basically my own character, animate it, create a short film out of it in an environment that's lit and rendered? Excuse me, you can't believe how much that's work you're asking. So what I do is I take people through a simple process of creating a very simple character with a simple rig and light it, texture it, create a simple environment, render it all out, shoot it out, maybe put some music or something. By the time we finish that, the students are exhausted, and it's usually taken much more than one class, even if it's a long one. And so so the idea of building a production requires lots and lots of assets and lots of talented people who do different things. Most people, just so you guys know, in case you've never thought of this before, most people do not, in fact, know how to do everything. They're not generalists, as we might say. Most people specialize in one thing. Kind of like you're saying, Drawn Skull, you'd rather do the modeling, and you don't necessarily want to be an animator. I knew a fantastic rigger who rigged the eagle for Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, name dropping. But for the eagle that shows up in the very first scenes, it's a CG eagle that was made to look like 2D. And he rigged that thing, and he told me point blank, he said, as soon as I'm done with the rigging, I'm done, I'm bored, I don't want to be an animator. I like rigging, I like the mathematical equation aspect of rigging. And of course, he always works. Last time I checked anyway, he's always in demand. And so, yeah, not everyone can do everything. So to put together a CG 3D animated show is difficult if you want to get it right. And as you're saying, Vanessa, as you're saying, it's easier with kids just because it's less demanding. Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. That's a really good answer to that question or situation, is because kids shows you can do it much easier. You know, my Oscar. And went to learn about that's fantastic. That's a happy ending story. I'm sorry it happened, but that's a good story. And I will say this. I know one of my best friends works at a school that teaches people who are on the spectrum. Oddly enough, people are drawn to the school, our school, CG Spectrum, because of the word spectrum, but that's not really it's not really got anything to do with that definition of the word. But I know someone who works specifically with students who are on the spectrum, even more specifically with those who are categorized as autistic. I don't know if that's something we're supposed to define people as anymore, if that has a stigma attached to it, or if it's, I don't think it does. I think it's just a definition. But it's tricky with definitions nowadays. You want to be real careful and not offend anyone. So I don't intend to, but that is by his definition what he does is he works with students who are autistic. And they're very good with animation. Again, not to generalize, not all of them are, but there are students who are drawn to animation because of the challenges that they have for whatever reason they have them, and they just excel at it. And so they've done little shorts and things, and they're just great, him and his crew of talented students. And they've found a niche, they found a place where they really belong. So not to imply anything about anybody who's chimed in today, I'm just telling a story about a friend of mine who works, and you're telling me that you were in a coma and then had challenges, and then were able to pull out of them using whatever forms of therapy you did. I think it's just wonderful. I think it's a great, very hopeful way to look at things. Is there's room for everybody in this world, and everybody's got specific talents, and sometimes you just need to find them, I guess. But more than anything, welcome back. Congratulations. That's a pretty scary thing to consider, that things like that can happen, but they can. Live long enough and you'll see all sorts of amazing things that happen and amazing stories of people who recover from adversity. Yeah, I'm glad that you got your art back. That's a heartwarming story for the stream today. I appreciate your candor and honesty in telling it. So, as you can see, I'm now going in and doing the whiskers, and I'm doing the overlap and follow through and making decisions as we talk. It's not that easy to do while you're blabbering on and on. So if I make a lot of corrections, it's just because I'm working things out. But I want you guys to be able to see something happen rather than just doing cleanup or something like that. So I'm building in the overlap and follow through on this, and then I'll go check it, and then I'll make a bunch of corrections to it, and then refine it, and then hopefully by the end of today, then we'll see something that looks like the whiskers are flopping around. That's the goal, because it is even though I'm doing something a little more subtle, I'm trying not to go for a big exaggerated take. It's still a big take, so I want to make sure that it's reading properly. All right. So, Disney is just money that can pretty much make all the 3D. You would be surprised, Drawn Skull. You would be very surprised that even with all the money in the world, it's still a really expensive proposition to do an animation project. I was reading a story today from a great animator, Ken Duncan, who was talking about his experiences with Kobe and how they were going to maybe make some animated films together, and it just probably came down to expense in the end, as it usually does. It's just funny how that works. It's just incredibly expensive to make animated films and to have a staff of people who are working night and day to get animated projects done. And for those of you who are still uninitiated, for those of you who are still kind of new to the idea, it's really expensive to make animated films, even with all the tools we have today, because you've got to find people who can do it, for one thing, and then you have to have the assets and the resources to build the assets, as we're talking about, and you have to be able to store everything, render everything. It's just, it's quite an ordeal. Just so you know, even the worst of them ends up costing a lot of money and being quite an undertaking. So be kind to your lousy animated films or shows. You can't even begin to fathom how hard people worked on them. I always cite Food Fight, if anybody is aware of what that film was. That project as an example of a lot of work went into that thing, even though it really looks terrible and was ill-conceived from the start. But just look at the credit listing for any film. For example, Klaus, if you look at a film like that, and you'll see just how many people worked really, really hard on films like that to try and make them look good. And then people in audiences will just look at things and go, I didn't like it that much, and just completely neglect the fact that people gave their hearts and souls to these projects and put a lot of love into them. We certainly did with each of the films that I worked on, and it was always, and not to go there, not to get all down on it, but it was always kind of heartbreaking when we would show up on Monday after one of the films that I worked on at DreamWorks failed to connect with the audience. In other words, was not a hit, was a flop. And you'd always wonder, are we going to be out of a job now? So not only did people not embrace the film that you put all this work and love into, but you're wondering if you're going to get to make another one. And the worst of them, for me at least, I think, was probably El Dorado. Sinbad was the worst because it was so dismal. And I was in London when it premiered the second time. I got to watch it fail in the US, and then I got to watch it fail in London. And by London, I knew I would just happen to be there on vacation, and I knew when it came out it was going to fail there too, and of course it did. And so I got to see it fail twice. It's really hard, but I didn't have any ties to that film, and I wasn't as tied to it as I was El Dorado, which I just absolutely loved working on that film and had such a good time. And then to find that just nobody went and nobody cared, and that was the end of that. And then on to the next one. Fortunately, there was a next one. We weren't convinced that there would be, but there was. Jeffrey Katzenberg, who started DreamWorks, he was determined to make the studio successful. And there may have been a little bit of malice against Michael Eisner, who ran Disney as well. And he got his wish. He was able to get make DreamWorks successful, more successful than Disney, at least for a little while. So, and they're still successful. But let's see, nice. Follow through the list. Yeah, so Oscar, yeah, it's expensive and time consuming, and time equals money. So when you have people working long hours on a film to make it look beautiful, it costs. And that's just the bitter truth. Even with Toon Boom, even with the ability, like I was doing before, I could copy and paste these whiskers and I can place them anywhere, do anything I want with them. It's still the time I'm taking to do this, it costs. And it just, if you want it right, if you want it to really look good, you have to take the time and take the money. So, and then Don Bluth is also trying his best to keep cell animation alive. Yeah, go Don. Don Bluth is one of the reasons that I actually really started down the path of trying to get a job in animation, because he was producing lots of stuff in the late 80s. And I was a big fan of Dragon's Lair and Space Ace, which I have done other pieces that are in that style. I did them in other streams. Maybe you guys saw them. And all I can say, I don't want to say too much about Mr. Bluth because I really am a fan of his work, but all I can say is from a business standpoint, a lot of my friends weren't real happy with how he conducted business, and it's living proof. I guess I'll just leave it at that. If I could put a positive spin, it's living proof that these films are really hard to make, because Don Bluth has risen like a phoenix again and again, and lost everything, and then came back, and then lost it again, and then came back, and as in his pursuit of trying to get his movies made. And sometimes it resulted in some of the people that I was friends with not being paid, or working on projects that were suddenly shut down, and coming to work at a studio and finding that the doors are locked and you are dismissed, and you don't need to come back, and you're not going to get any money out of this. So, I mean, that's, if that doesn't explain it well, I don't know what else does. Is it's expensive and time consuming to make these movies, and that's why not a lot of people do them. Note that Klaus was, as far as I can tell, I mean, it was a successful film. It got great reviews. People really liked it, and it was a good experience for those who worked on it. So there's no reason why there shouldn't be another one. Well, the reason there isn't another one is because that was a big undertaking to just bank everything on making a film like that, and then and then it's done, and then it just goes out into the world. You just can't even begin to conceive how much work goes into every single frame of a film like that. And so you can't just make films. When I was a kid, I thought, oh, well, why don't you make a film about space or about monsters or whatever? Just make it. And it's like, well, even the least of them takes so much work. So, well, hello, Riz W Animation. Welcome back. I am sorry to hear that, and I hope that you're able to fight your infirmity and move through things all the same. Yeah, they are hard to. John Scott, they're bringing back Shrek. Said it could be a sequel. Oh boy, the original cast. You're always on top of things, John Scott. I appreciate it. It's fun to hear what's going on. Illumination. It's going to be made by the director of Austin Powers. Oh, okay. Yeah, you know what? Now that you mentioned it, I did hear that. I did hear that they are going to use I don't remember his name actually. Maybe you can tell me what the name was, but a good dear friend of mine, she was his cousin. If I remember his name right. If you have that name, I'd love to see you post it so I can confirm that if it's who I'm thinking of. But yeah, she said that she was the cousin of the first director of the first Austin Powers movie anyway. I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, it didn't make any difference. I never met him. Jay something? It was a real familiar name, like the name of somebody who was a child star or something like that. I remember she said that he was a cool guy. Toy Story took 4 years to make, yeah. And from my understanding back then was for anybody who's a CG animation person, you may or may not know that in CG animation, you're basically working with a puppet, a virtual puppet, and you have these little controls on the ends of the puppet's arms and legs and head or wherever anything's supposed to move, and you just reach in with your mouse and you move those things, and that's how you get, and then you take a snapshot of it, which is basically a key or extreme pose, and then when you run them at speed, as the images are flashing by, it appears that the character is moving. And that's, you know, how animation was always done. But back in the CG animation days, they actually, from what I understand, I didn't do it myself, they couldn't just click on something and move the character's arm around like this. They actually had to go up into what's called a channel box, box with values in it, and go to the right arm, and then type in values, type in numbers that make the arm go from here to here. Certainly that's how they had to do it back in the days of Tron and Luxor Jr., the first Pixar film, the Note, because I watched those documentaries as a kid and went, what on earth is this? I get drawing. I don't understand computers, or back then, like in the 80s, or what they're doing with this process. I tried it in high school. I actually tried doing a computerized logo. So that would have been 1983 or so. And you could do simple stuff back then, but as far as making characters look like they have emotions and things, the idea of typing in values to get them to move is mind-boggling to me, and I'm so glad we don't have to do that anymore. Yeah, so I'm not surprised Toy Story took 4 years. And if you look at old CG animation, I was looking at, I think, Chicken Little the other day, clips from it, and I was like, wow, we've really come a long ways. And hurrah, hurrah. And we'll continue to keep going further. If you've seen Soul, you know, it's unbelievable how beautiful these films have come to look, and they'll just keep going in that direction. They'll just keep getting better and better. So Michael McCullers, okay, it's not who I was thinking of then. Drawn Skull. So yeah, don't know. I actually went to, I started out at Bear Animation with Mike. He directed one of the Shrek sequels, I think 3 or 4. Mike Mitchell. And we started out together, and he wouldn't remember me anymore. He was actually my director on Alvin and the Chipmunks movie, and I never approached him. And just, it's been a million years. He probably would have said, oh yeah, I remember you. Anyway, back to the movie. But he started out with me, and I got to watch him evolve, and actually had lunch early on when he first became a director of TV shows. And it was just really cool to see somebody so talented who evolved into somebody who's made some really fun movies. I think he directed the first Trolls, and his personality is all over that thing. He was the one who said on Alvin and the Chipmunks 3, he's like, I really like it when the chipmunks fall and get hurt, and it's funny. And so he's like, keep doing that, it's great. And he made that movie a little more weird and a little less the kind of financial cash cow that it kind of ended up being. And it was more about having fun and less necessarily about trying to sell plush toys or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, Vanessa, we're very lucky. We're very lucky. It's just things like Maya being able to do caching now. You know, you can cache your scene and play it at speed inside of your Maya session. That was just unheard of. When I first started, we had to play blast everything to see how things looked, even the lightest of things. I guess maybe bouncing ball, you could, with a polygon ball, you could actually play that at speed, but that was about it. I mean, even today, I tell my students that you need to do a play blast every now and then just to make sure your stuff is running nicely at speed. But yeah, it's just so much better now than it used to be. So RizW Animate in 3D, do you like it? RizW Animation, do you like animating in 3D? I'm just curious. Jay Roach, thank you. Yeah, Jay Roach was the one who did. I knew it was Jay something, and Jay Roach. It sounds like a kid star or something. So yeah, my friend's cousin, and we were always going to meet up with him and have him take us out to dinner, but it never quite happened. So hey, Kevin, and good morning to you too. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you. So, Riz. There are still mistakes in Toy Story, yeah, and the rendering doesn't look so hot anymore too, but boy, at the time it came out, it was a revelation, and a lot of people in 2D animation suddenly got very anxious, and for good reason, because it would eventually take over, and they would kick all the 2D animators out and replace them with 3D animators or people who were already 2D but could do 3D. It was heartbreaking at the time. I'm very zen about it. I feel like things happen for a reason. I also survived that wave, so I can't complain too much. Apparently at DreamWorks, apparently there was a Hollywood Reporter article that lists everybody who was at DreamWorks for, I don't know, for how long, how many years, and they just posted the article in the lobby of DreamWorks, the main building, and we're all listed in there saying thank you for, great. I think it's 10 years, or I don't know how long. I mean, it's been a lot longer than that now, so I don't know what that article was for, but I just saw it and saw my name in there. That's cool. It's like, yep, it's official. We were all there for a very long time, and there's a lot of names, and so I'm really very zen about it. I think whatever is meant to be is meant to be, and there's no point in fighting against things like technology. It is what it is, and you either jump on the train or move with it, or you let it run you over, or you just walk away and find another train. But it's still heartbreaking that everybody had to lose their jobs, and then everything was just replaced with CG so quickly. It's just another one of those things. Well, Kevin, that's wonderful. Thank you for that kind compliment. I'm glad it's a beautiful morning. It's night here, but I always say it's working international with international stuff, which is what I do at CG Spectrum. Night, day, morning, noon, doesn't matter to me. It's all good. So Rizwan, oh, so that's Rizwan Animate. Rizwanmation is how you kind of included your name into your title of your SIG. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that with us. I think 2D will ever get back to the big screen. Well, yes. The short answer is yes. I think it will absolutely. As long as, I say this every week, I say this all the time, but as long as there are people who are interested in it, it'll keep coming back around. Will there ever be another Disney Renaissance age where, we've got Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and et cetera, et cetera? Probably not. That's really hard to replicate. And if it does come back in that way, it would be in a way that's new and innovative. Look at Spider-Verse. Look how everybody flocked to see that thing. Look at the superhero movies, how everybody was going to those for a while, and we could go to them. Wonder Woman, Black Panther, etc. I say this all the time. Hollywood will make whatever people are willing to pay to see. So it's up to you guys to prove that animation is a viable medium for film by paying to see those films. So when you have the option to stream something for free, maybe consider, at least every now and then consider paying for it outright and showing Hollywood, it's like, no, I really liked Klaus. I would pay to rent that film. And then they'll go, ooh, we can make money off of this. We'll make some more, if that's something you want. That's all there is to it, folks. There's nothing more to it. The reason 2D animation went away in the first place was because it wasn't making money and CG animation was. And it's very short-sighted to think that the one cancels out the other, that there's no room for both. And then you have studios like, I never say this right, but Goblins, Goebl, I think they're in France, who did Triplets of Belleville and others. And they kept doing it. They kept making 2D animated films. And then there was the one that's Irish. I think they're Ireland based. I should know this, but I don't. But they did The Secret of the Kellis and have done, and they're still making movies. They're still making 2D animated feature films. But it's up to audiences to say that's what we want to see or not. So if you want there to be 2D on the big screen, you need to go to 2D if it ever shows up on a big screen. Frankly, I'm not sure that the big screen itself is long for this world. I don't know. Not just for lockdown reasons, but just before the pandemic, there was still a question of, are theaters going to continue? Or people just love to see movies at home and they don't need to go out to a theater to see a film presented well. That, again, depends on you guys. It's your turn to make these decisions, and you make those decisions by spending money or not, as the case may be. So, sort of a grim answer to that question, but it's the truth. That's all there is to it. If you like it, support it, and they'll continue to do it. I heard of the B-Stars. Animation is 3D, but the style is 2D. There are a lot of games. Yeah, so Vanessa, that's a really good point. My humble opinion is that you will find hybrids. We've been talking about hybrids for years. I first heard the concept of tradigital back at DreamWorks, and they were trying to talk about a way of animating that incorporated digital animation as well as 2D. We were trying to figure out, well, what's the bridge between CG, which is so technical, and 2D, which is so artist friendly, which is so analog. And the answer was tradigital. And then you have the eagle at the beginning of Spirit, Stallion, whatever, which is like a 20-year-old film now, but they took a CG character and made it look like it fit into the 2D animation universe. We started doing that as early as, oh boy, Lion King at least, and probably earlier than Lion King. And that's, I think, where the future lies. That's Klaus, the same thing. It's a 2D, 3D hybrid film. And so keep moving, keep going forward, and keep pushing it. And I think Spider-Verse, that's another one that uses a lot of 2D influence, but is a CG animated film. And that, I think, is where things are headed. But again, you guys will determine these things. It's up to you. If you want to see it, support it, as I always say, and I won't keep saying it. But, you know, it's worth noting that that is the way that the world works. So 3D takes too much time to make. Well, look at what I'm doing here tonight. I haven't even finished the whiskers. I mean, also I'm talking, but 2D takes a really long time. In fact, one of the things I liked about this is Riz Animation commenting that 3D takes too much time. It takes a long time regardless. You're creating motion one frame at a time. And there was this misconception when we first started with CG animation. And one of the main reasons studio heads thought to get rid of 2D and only do CG based stuff was they thought, well, it's just faster. And animation isn't fast. It shouldn't be fast. If it's fast, it doesn't look good. If you're doing it fast, it's because you're doing it on the cheap, and it ends up not looking too nice. So beware of doing things faster because the quality is you get what you pay for. So Ghibli 2D is good inspiration for future 2D movies and movements, so ethereal. Yeah. Oddly enough, I mean, the whole anime thing is going through a kind of interesting period. Will they continue to just do it the old-fashioned way? Again, as you will find, now's another time to, I'm just going to plug this again. We have our first animation mentor who is works in anime exclusively and lives in Tokyo and is going to be teaching our 2D animation program. It's just the same old program as always, but it's going to do it from the standpoint of being someone who works in anime and can offer tips and tricks. For that, I'm going to put this link in the chat again. If you want to check out a blog about what it's like to be an anime artist, please check this out. It's got some cool little visuals and lots of great information, and that's going to be our teacher, who is now, I believe, starting in March. So if you want to be a part of that, you want to sign up for it. But it's just a fun read regardless. But yeah, so talking about anime and what's happening overseas, even as we speak, are they going to switch over to CG? Is it Lupin 2? Or is it Lupin 3? I don't remember, but that was a anime film that came out recently that has a kind of anime hybrid / CG look. I'll let you look it up, but you guys probably already know about it anyway. And I had mixed feelings about it. I thought they did a really nice job. I don't know that it was groundbreaking. It certainly wasn't Spider-Verse. And I don't know that it answered the call of being a hybrid between 2D and CG. It was good at both. It was good at CG, I think. And it was good at mimicking the 2D style. But did it capture that style that everybody loves, that sort of choppy anime look? And just for the record, and this comes from our anime instructor who works in the business, the choppy look of anime is based solely on the fact that they don't want to pay for putting everything on twos, that it's a way of cutting costs. I argued for years that it's like, no, it's a specific look and they prefer it, and that's the goal, is to get that choppy look, and a lot of my students want to replicate that. And I have it on good order from our anime teacher, who's going to be instructing for us starting in March, that no, it's just a cost-cutting measure to have everything on 4s and 6s. So you heard it there, folks, right from the source, it's a cost-cutting measure and not really done as an aesthetic choice. So I'm not going to touch that one. We'll just leave it at that. But yeah, it's something that you have to think about. It's a look, and a lot of people really love the Miyazaki look, and it's very inspirational. But I think even that's going to be a hybrid pretty soon. They're going to mix Western and Eastern styles and come up with something new. Disney needs to make an adult animated Deadpool series. Yeah, well, good luck with that. Disney has tried to dip their toes into the adult market with Hollywood Pictures, and there was another one in the 90s, the one that produced Tarantino, the Pulp Fiction. There was a lot of kerfuffle about that in the old days. Oh my goodness, Disney is producing a film that has all this violence and swearing in it. So we'll see if Disney is... they're probably still doing it and it's just hidden. I don't know. But yeah, a lot of us would love to see something a little more adult-centered. And Disney films, look at Bambi, look at Pinocchio. I recently heard they not banned, but they've taken Dumbo and Peter Pan and another one out of the mix, so children can't see them. They have to request them or something like that on Disney Plus, because it's got sensitive material that didn't age very well in those films. And it's true. I mean, it doesn't age well, and they have to do something. They have to make a call one way or another. But yeah, adult stuff. They tried it with Black Cauldron, didn't work. They tried it with their live action films, didn't work. People got really upset when Disney tried to get a little more sophisticated, I call it. And so you won't see the like of that again anytime soon, I guess. So yeah, I'd love it if Disney took their resources and did something really good. I mean, Mandalorian, I guess that counts in a weird way. So, but Riz one says, I have 3D animation on your YouTube channel. Yeah, if anybody wants to check that out, check it out. If you make mistakes, you got to fix them. Yeah, so I'm going to stay away from the topic of outsourcing, but outsourcing has led to many a mistake and a lot of fixing up. So at the same time, it's wonderful that outsourcing provides work for people outside of the US. Sometimes it's also problematic in that it can be more trouble than it's worth. Sometimes, I guess the answer is that all countries should and probably will eventually have their own resources to do this stuff, and then you can work from wherever. And I really do think that that's the way things are going to go. That's the number one thing I predict is that this year has proven that a lot of stuff can be outsourced, can be work from home situations. People can work from home, and so that stuff can, you don't have to work in Hollywood anymore necessarily if you want a job in the entertainment business. I think that that's one thing that we've learned this year. One positive thing, I think it's a positive thing. So for anybody out there who's like, oh, I want to work in the industry, but I can't move to Los Angeles, well, maybe you won't have to in the near future. You can work from home wherever you are. So there is that. Yeah, I kind of answered that one. It's because of the fluid for emotion. Yes, Vanessa, yeah, fluidity for emotion. Big exaggerated expressions are stable. We've seen some good looking 3D anime, but it's lacking. Yeah, I'm not sold on animation. It's 3D. That's anime just yet. So, and I'm also curious. It's a question that comes up every now and then too. Is well, are people going to get sick of the anime thing? It's sort of like the Ren and Stimpy stuff I was just showing images of. Eventually, it's been done and done and done, and everybody's had their fill of it, and they're looking for something new. I suspect, I think it's already happening, that anime is morphing and changing all the time and coming up with new looks and new ways of doing things. But history tells us that if it doesn't, if it just stays stuck, eventually it's not going to survive. Something else always comes along and is always faster, cheaper, better, newer, whatever, and addresses the needs of whatever generation is currently on the hot plate. So think about it this way. Most of the people I know who are excited about animation, they grew up with it. It was on TV constantly when they were kids. In the same way that when I was a kid, Warner Brothers cartoons were on all the time. You couldn't get away from Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny was everywhere. And it influenced the way we thought about the world. It just, those cartoons, shaped us. Those of us who were molded by it. In the same way that Disney cartoons were just the most important thing in the world to anybody who was a kid of a certain age. Well, that went away and anime took its place. And so kids who were raised with that were all excited about that. Well, guess what? Same thing's going to happen eventually. A new generation will be sold on whatever else they were raised on. And it may or may not fit in with the older generation. And we don't know how long these things last. We only know that change is inevitable. And so your mission, should you choose to accept it, I always say that, but your mission as a person who wants to get into entertainment, if that's what you want to do, be it games, commercials, movies, shows, whatever, is to keep your eyes and ears open and watch what's happening in the trends of the world, and know that if you don't like the way things are going, but you want to stay in the business, you're going to have to adapt. So all the people that I know who were not keen on CG animation ended up not working anymore for a long time. It's a lot better now, but simply because they just couldn't roll with the tide. And it was, again, really sad and a wake-up call to a lot of people that it's like, you're only really as good as your last project. And so when all the 2D projects went away, a lot of people just found other careers. Some people held on, some people kept the torch burning. Ken Duncan Animation has kept the torch burning and is thriving and doing wonderful. And if 2D comes back, I have no doubt it'll be because of his studio and the great things that they're doing and are going to continue to do. But again, it always comes back to whatever people want to see. So if you find yourself working in the industry and you're really happy with the way things are going, don't assume that means you can just rest and relax. It means stay excited about it and look at the trends and try to stay with the trends, even if it isn't immediately what you think that you want to do. When CG animation came along, I hated it. I hated Maya more than anything I'd ever done up to that point professionally. I did tracebacks, which is copying a character over and over and over with pencil and paper, and the character's not moving, and doing that all day can be pretty stultifying, can be pretty harsh, but Maya was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before, and I had to teach myself how to do it. and I was convinced it was never going to happen. And then slowly but surely I began to realize that it's just another tool, and that I really, really liked it. And now I just think of it as another tool to express myself in a different way. And so as future artists, keep your eye on the trends and don't assume that anything that you see happening today is going to be there forever, because the only constant is change, as they say. And then be one of those people who are on the cutting edge, on the front lines for when things change, when anime morphs into whatever it's going to be next. And, you know, show us how it's done and have a lot of fun along the way. So anyway, exaggerated animation. Disney's making Deadpool 3. Cool, I like the first one. I didn't see the second one. Sorry about that sound. On Fox, yeah. So now that Disney's pretty much taken over the entire world, I guess they own everything. So I remember, I think it was the first one to go was Hanna-Barbera was bought out by Ted Turner or something, and now all of a sudden they were mixing Fred Flintstone with Bugs Bunny, and actually now would be a really good time for them to remake something or make something like Roger Rabbit, which used all of the cartoon characters from different studios, because now they're all owned by Disney, so why not? You're currently animating the bones in your characters for Space Jam. Oh, that's cool. You have to learn Lightwave. Yeah, well, we all have to learn about Unreal, Lightwave, Houdini. Hey, Classics AM, nice to see you. Welcome. Just for the record, I'm talking about, well, we're talking about the usual. I'm talking about trends in the industry, and I'm animating the whiskers on our friend O'Malley, the alley cat. I'm actually going to play it and see how it goes. I'm actually frightened. Maybe we'll just scrub through it first and see. Yeah, it's not great, but it's not bad either. Not missing one drawing. It's all right. So I'll play it in just a second. I want to extend one frame. It's another wonderful thing that you can do, is extend exposure. Extend it. Oh, I'll do it this way. I'll extend the exposure so that it lasts. I can already tell that there's a couple little problems with it. It'll be fun to point out what the problems are. I really did this on the fly. I just wanted to do this while I was drawing away, so I didn't put a lot of thought into it. But let's take a look at this now. See how it looks when I play it at speed. Man, it's not bad. A little floaty. Needs a little bit of work. But the overall animation was what I was trying to get. Just the overall bounce of the whiskers. And once it's colored in, the whiskers will be knocked down a little bit. They won't be quite as prominent on his face, but it looks like there's some points here where they squeal. Oh, there we go. That's the problem, right? That's what I was looking at. So I'm going to, well, fix that up. It's worth it. It needs a few more in-betweens, that's all. And then we'll play it again. So yeah, just adding a couple in-betweens here. It was floating on his face, so that'll help. So yeah, hello Classics. Am I onion skinning? Yeah, so I know it's terrible. You guys come here hoping for information. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just doing it. I have a hotkey. Well, I think it's maybe just the Toon Boom hotkey, but combo it's Alt-O, and then that's the onion skin. And you can see that I have a red drawing and a green drawing, and my mission is to draw between the lines for the red drawing and the green drawing. So in case I've not done this before, or just for the sake of fun, in-betweens, what are they? Well, I've got a whisker here, that's whisker A. I've got a whisker here, that's whisker B. C. And I need to draw one in between. I need to draw something in between. In order to have fluid motion, I need to have an in-between. And so an in-between looks like this. Who was saying, oh, your drawings are so nice and smooth earlier? Well, not anymore. It's getting late. And what this in-between is deceptively simple. What I've just done is I've drawn a drawing in between A and C, so that's B. And B should be, in theory, a perfect distance between A to B and B to C, that distance should be equal. if that's what you want. If you want it to be nice and smooth, if you want it to favor, if you want it to have a little snap, then you draw it closer to one or closer to the other. But you would make that decision in order to make it look more snappy, which I might do with these whiskers at some point. You may have noticed that this is on a curve and this is on a curve. So all in-betweens would be respectful of an arc. Anything that you do, I'm just going to get rid of this. Anything that you do in animation is going to have an arc. All things have arcs, organic or otherwise. Robots, maybe not so much, but anything that's character animation certainly has an arc. That means if a person's arm is down here, and then the person's arm goes up like this, then the distance between that arm in its A position and its C position is an arc. It doesn't go up like this. That's the first lesson for an animator, is to know that you don't just put an arm here and then it gets short. Everything has to have an arc to it. So to do an arc, you have to kind of plot it out and think of it like you would, almost in a mathematic way, and then make a determination. It's like, well, is it halfway through exactly? Well, that wouldn't look too nice. That it would work, but it wouldn't look too nice, because look at this, you got this straight arm here. It's really not going to be an attractive in between when you're done. So probably you want to favor one side or the other. In this case, I would favor the arm that's down. Straighten it out some, but not as much as I did just then. And then that ends up being halfway between A and C. So A, C, and then B is halfway between. And that means that the distance is more or less the same from A to B and B to C, but it's respectful of this arc. And then this arc isn't necessarily always going to be so clearly defined. The arc may actually be a case where, let's see if I can do this. I'm just drawing with up in the midst to make it go faster, but let's say the arm is here on A, and then it's here on C. So it's moving forward away from, I'll drop fingers, that helps describe it a little bit better. So it's moving away from the camera. How do you in between something like that? Do you put the hand right here, and then that's an in between? Or let's try something else that's wrong. Would you put the hand here, and that's the in between from A? Now there may be situations where you do that. I don't know, can't think of one right off the bat. More likely what you'd do is you'd create an arc, and you'd say, well, the hand swings around as it goes back to that final position, and then wherever it ends up, that is a distance that's equal, greater, or less than the place where it started, and then that is where I end up with the in-betweens. And so in-between is a really, really important art, and it's something that I did, again, in cleanup for years and years and years. I don't know, half my career in 2D animation was as a cleanup person. And by doing cleanup, I learned a lot about animation. It was basically an animation assistant position. That's what they called it back in the olden days. Was you would assist a proper animator. But it also, another way of describing it is if you were going to animate a circle going from here to here, you could think of it as being in a tube, and the tube gives you an idea where the circle should be at any given point when you're animating. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., etc. And then after having done all that, you would have a nice smooth move from the top down, but it would respect the edges of this arc that you've drawn and create something like a three-dimensional tube. And then this could start off, it's one side, and it gets thinner and thinner as it goes. And then as it starts to show the opposite side as it spins, things like that. That's kind of a complex idea. I don't want to go off on that too much, but anyway, in-betweens, and they're awfully important. They can make or break your scene or your animation, and a good animator at Disney Studios would always have a good rough in-betweener assistant who could go in and take the keys of, say, Glen Keane and turn them into the final animation that you'd see in a movie, which would then be cleaned up by an artist such as I was at Disney, who will then draw the character on model, nice and clean, respectful of the original animation, but also filling in a lot of the gaps that will make it then look really, really smooth. So anyway, a little bit of a primer there on in between, for better or worse. Now, you mentioned motion tween. Motion tween's good if you were using the cutout style. That is, I've got a character who is sorry, I've got a character who's cut into pieces, and then I'm going to animate it by rotating those individual pieces, which are connected via joints, like a puppet. And what I can do is I can then set the character on this pose on one frame, and then move the character's arm using the rotation ability here on another frame, and then a program like Toon Boom or Animate CC in the Adobe Suite, it will interpolate between those two frames. Interpolate is a fancy word for in-betweening, just so you know. So we've got the A pose here, the C pose here, and then the in-betweens, however many you chose, could be all of these, and the program will do the in-betweening for you. Here's the misnomer. The misnomer is that, oh, all I have to do is put in drawing A and drawing C, and then the program will do the rest of it for me. First of all, it won't, because it's a computer and it doesn't know from good animation. It only knows about A to B. For example, if I put a ball here, and then I put a ball here, and then one here, it's not going to make an arc out of that. The program is going to go A, B, C. If I want this to have an arc to it, then what I have to do is I have to tell the program where I want things to go. So for example, A plus B plus. Now we're going to have a nice arc. Now it's going to look organic. But I had to give the program these extra poses and frames of information in order for the program to understand what I wanted. Again, the program just doing what you tell it to. And I always say when I talk about Maya, but it's kind of the same with Toon Boom if you're going to do cutout style animation. I always say that the program is over here and it wants something. You're over here and you want something. You have to meet in the middle and become friends. And you can't let the program win, in which case your animation will look flat and lifeless. And the program will not let you win. You can't just do anything willy-nilly. You have to respect the rules of the program and how it's set up and play within those rules in order to get the results that you're interested in. So anyway, just a little, again, a little primer on how digital animation sometimes works. Sometimes it's very frustrating and you have to go into a program and go, no, you're going to do it my way. There is no other option. But that's a little bit of a talk about motion tween. I'm not using motion tweens on this one. I used them, I don't know, a few streams before. I'll come back to them. I'm going to demonstrate cutouts if it's the last thing I do in the next few weeks at some point. We've got a cutout rig. I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to show it off and do something cool with it. But not this week. You're working on John Scoy, creating your own character worlds. Yes, I remember you like to create character worlds and you like the dark stuff. So yeah, go out there and show us all how it's done. Put it all together and then get them to pay you for it. That's the dream come true, isn't it? So yep, go out and take the world by storm. Classics. I like the purple hearts. That's great. Nice. So we got about a little more than 15 minutes left. So I'm going to finish up with what I'm drawing here. But if you have any specific questions or thoughts, anything on your mind today, I mean, you guys are already talking, and that's great. I appreciate you chiming in and chatting. It gets lonely out here in the ether sometimes. But yeah, we got about 15, 20 left before we're done with another stream for the day. So whatever whatever's on your mind, feel free to hit me up. Again, as long as it's tasteful and interesting to share. I'm just about done with the whiskers here, and now I'm going to play it and show you guys the work in progress. Like I said, I do these streams on the fly. I try to come up with simple stuff because it's sometimes complicated to discuss matters of grave importance like studio franchises and things while I'm drawing and do a nice drawing. But if you chime in next week, the cleanup pass will be underway, and hopefully this is going to be a nice scene. All right, let's play it and see how it's looking. There we go. That's a little better. So that's my whisker pass, which was separate. For anybody who's just joined us, I did it separately because I didn't want to mess up the drawings that were already there. I'm still in the rough pass stage, and so and then the whiskers are not necessarily. I had to work a lot of things out with the whiskers, as far as how big they are and how they're working with the face. And I can already see it's like they look like they're a little long on the one side of the face and a little longer than on the other side. So when I'm offline, I usually go in and do some detail work, but I'll start doing a little bit of that tonight. Or I could do the first cleanup. Yeah, might as well start the cleanup. I'm kind of curious to see myself how this cat's going to look when it's done. So I'm going to save this. It's so important that you save. It's important to save. And then I'm going to version up. It's so important that you version up. So this one was saved as new cat take. I'm going to save it again and call this rough. It's a cat, but I'm going to call it rough, as in dog. Then I'm going to save another version. Save as a new version, and I'm going to call this one the CU, meaning the cleanup pass that I'm going to start doing now, just because I'm curious to see myself how it's going to look. So cleanup pass underway. And then you may have noticed I've got these handy dandy charts here. They need to be updated. I've changed the timing on this ever so slightly so they don't quite match up. But these charts are going to help me figure out how I should do the cleanup pass and what order I should do the drawings. So I'll fix that up offline. It's kind of boring. But we'll get in here and we'll start thinking about the cleanup pass and see how far we get. So, well, thanks, Classics. I'm glad that you appreciate the time. It's my pleasure. As I always say, I'm here for you guys. So anything you guys are interested in, that's what I try to come up with stuff that you might find interesting, whether it's technical stuff, Toon Boom, animation technical, or history. It's always easiest to talk about myself and my career in the business, but it's up to you guys. Well, so for Vanessa, yeah, I mean, that was the goal, to do something that's got that old school organic Disney look. There's a lot of flaws in this. I am not an animation master by any means. I can see some stuff I want to fix up with the arms before I get too heavy into the cleanup pass. It's looking a little rough. But yeah, with 2D, the goal is to give it that old. The goal was to give it that old 70s look, and it's just going to keep looking more and more Disney-ish when I start laying down the cleanup lines. But that was the goal. And then Drama School, you're trying to figure out if your characters are more CG or 2D. Trying to visualize it in your head. Well, what about a hybrid? You could do 2D and CG at the same time. The last thing I did that I finished, the last piece that I finished, if anybody remembers or is interested, was a piece that I used. I drew it by hand, and then I went and I used the node system in Toon Boom to give effects, to give tones and highlights that make it look more three-dimensional. You can draw those, you can do them with Toon Boom's tools, but there's no reason not to use them now. It makes it look really, really sharp. And again, that's digital. That's a combination of traditional and digital. Traditional being more drawn stuff, that organic look you're talking about, and digital being more technical, more math-based slightly. So anyway, yeah, again, lead the way. Do something new and innovative no one's ever seen before. All right, so now going to pop the cats on screen. I want to take a look at how the cat originally looked. It looks like the cat had a really dark line again. I don't think that's a still from the movie. It's just a production still. So let's look at one from the real thing. Looks like he had a really dark line and a rather thick line. And I'm not going to try and copy the scratchy look. It may just happen by nature, but that was accomplished because they were Xeroxing lines that the animators had originally drawn and then cleaned up. And so it has that rough, scratchy look. That would be a lot of work to try and copy that. And it isn't what I'm going for here. So it looks like Thomas had a dark line. So I'll go for not black, but I'm going to go for a dark brown look. So I'm going to choose a color. I don't think I've ever done this live before. Choose a color, black, and then create a new node by just clicking on the plus sign. That creates a new color. I'm going to call this one outline. And then I double click on the color to choose what I'd like the color to be and just start playing around. So I'm going to pick a dark color and then make it dark brown this way. Sometimes I'll actually go in here and add RGB numbers to get this very specific color that I want, but this is close enough. It'll come off as black when it's done. It won't look, but doing it a little bit brown ever so slightly makes it more organic looking. So go ahead and hit OK. That one's my outline. And now I want to start playing around with the thickness of the line and see if that's working. So turn on the CU layer and just play around. When I'm first starting and doing outlines, I want to turn up the smoothing a lot. So this goes back to what we were saying before. If I'm going in here and trying to do a nice smooth line, inevitably it's going to have a little wiggle to it because that's just the way we are. I mean, it's not bad, but you know, not all my drawings will, my lines will be this clean. It just won't work out that way. So what I can do is turn up the smoothing a lot. Since this is a vector line, it's like you'd find in Illustrator. And now if I go really slow and I draw it, I make little mistakes. I'm doing that on purpose. You can see it irons them out, and that gives us at least a better chance of coming up with a really smooth line. As you can see, sometimes it corrects things I don't want corrected. It's making it difficult to draw. And if I were to do something, you know, and I wanted it to be real stylized and have all sorts of fanciness to it, wanted to do something really detailed, for example, an eye, and see how hard it is for me to draw an eye using this method. It's just making it a mess. Look at that awful thing. It won't even let me draw the interior line because the smoothing is turned up so high. So if I'm going to do detail work, then I probably want to turn it off and get in there and just do my detail work that way. It's really the only way to do it. So anyway, so smoothing can be your friend. It can also be a big pain, and you have to ride a line between using it a lot and then just trusting your hand and your ability to draw a smooth, clean line. So yeah, back to the pencil. So I'm going to turn it up to about 1/3 of the way and then take a look at the size of my line. Right now this is maybe, yeah, it's not bad. If I zoom out on it a little, it looks pretty good. That might be a good line size. And then I always make a note of it so that I can, when I come back into my scene, it always defaults. I know I don't set preferences, I should. But I have to go back in and I have to reset it, or I just forget, or I change it. And so I'm like, 10 is going to be the size of the line quality for this. What if we bumped it up to, I don't know, something more drastic? What if we did 15? How would that look? So 15 around its face. That's pretty chunky. That's way too much. So I think 10 is the winner. We'll stick with that one. Question. Have you met any of the 9 old men at Disney? So no, unfortunately I didn't meet them. I was there when they were still around, but the last 2 I think that were left were Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson. They were not doing so hot. I mean, they were very old by the time I caught up with them, and so they didn't come into the studio anymore. But people I knew who were like genius animators at the time, they knew them, and they would go out to their house even and visit. So for example, Dale Bear, who just passed away recently, he was taught by them, instructed by the original 9 old men, and he became one of the 9 young men, along with, I think, Glenn Keane, Count. I don't know if James Baxter counts or not. He's a little young to have been one of the 9 young men who are now old men. Again, poor Dale just passed away. So I was taught by the people who were taught by the 9 old men. And just to review, I always hate to have this conversation, but it's kind of interesting. They were the 9 old men. There were no women. If you look up online, women animators, 1940s, Disney, you'll see there was this letter that a woman wrote into the studio at the time, 40s or 50s, I don't remember when. And she said, hey, I want to be an animator. Can I be an animator at Disney? And the response she got is just, well, it's indicative of the times. That's all we can say. You can't rewrite history. We can try, we can ignore it, we can erase it. But it's probably important to kind of keep it in mind at least. And so the response was that they didn't think women could be animators, that they were much better at doing what I'm doing right now, which is ink and paint lines. And so they said, basically, if you want to be an ink and paint person, fill out an application and we'll consider you, but animation, no. And to be fair, at the same time, they were also hiring people like Mary Blair, who was a prominent female artist who set the look of like Alice in Wonderland and helped out with Cinderella, and was respected. It wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't there. I'm not that old, so I don't remember. I mean, I don't know what it was really like, but it's really weird to see this message that's that women were not suited to be animators. Well, that all changed, and so around the time. It was around 1980, as far as I know. One of my friends, who was, again, instructed by those people, was considered one of the new animators of that era, the 9 young, quote-unquote, men, and she was one of the 9 young people. So now there are tons and tons of people of all stripes. It's one of the things I love about animation these days, is it attracts people from all I'm trying to think of the right word to use without offending anyone, with it being inclusive. Animation is very inclusive. It includes everyone now, and the last studios that I worked at were very inclusive, and it was delightful to see that everybody's welcome and encouraged. It's one of the few businesses I know where not only is being different not a problem, it's encouraged. You're hired because you're different and because of what you bring to the table. And so there's room for everybody. And like I said, not only that, not only are you allowed, it's encouraged. We want diversity. That's what makes it as good as it is. So by all means, don't let that be a stopping point. It isn't something that should stop you anymore. It doesn't stop you anymore. It's encouraged. And it's a great time for people who are considered diverse, whatever that means. I mean, I'm considered diverse. Or was. And so you said don't let that stop you. But anyway, so back to the 9 old men. Yeah, it used to be just 9 old men, and then it was 9 young men who became 9 young people. I don't know if they actually say that or not. I don't think the whole thing has kind of fallen by the wayside. But I was taught by those people who were taught by the 9 old men. The people I worked with were the next generation: Dale Baer, Glenn Keane, James Baxter, Andres Deja, and many others I can't think of at the moment. They taught me what was taught by the 9 old men, and then I now teach what I was taught, everything that I know. And animation is something that is taught by mentors. It is something that you learn through classes by people who know what they're doing, and you don't get it from a book. You can maybe get it from a video, but it's not the same. You need someone there to help mentor you and tell you things that you just learn by doing, and then look at your work and help you become better at seeing, and then better at drawing, or in CG animation, even still, just looking at your work and helping you to figure out, well, why doesn't my stuff look like that? Well, a mentor will help you, and that's what we do at CG Spectrum. Is we professionals who mentor people who are interested in the business, whether it's to try and get a job or just because you love it and you want to do it, or you want to know all aspects of the business. Whatever your interests are, then you need to have a mentor who can stand over your shoulder and have you do walk cycles and bouncing balls and things like that. And that's what the 9 old men did when they set up the 12 principles, which you can look up online. They needed to find a way to pass along the information that they'd had from developing animation as a medium in a successful way. They needed to find a way to pass that torch down to younger generations. And so they created the 12 principles and then enforced those 12 principles on younger animators throughout the years, leading to the next guard of animators who then passed it on to the people in the 90s and then beyond, who are now passing the torch again to anybody who's interested. And one of the things that some people are afraid of is, if it doesn't get passed, does it die? So 2D animation, the way it was done up until the 90s, up until the 2000s when they switched it out and said, we don't want to do 2D at Disney anymore, and we just want to do CG. Well, if it doesn't get passed forward, it kind of dies with that generation, because that's the only way you can learn this stuff. Fortunately, there's a lot of us out there who are passing the torch. Sergio Pablo being one of them, with Klaus, and the French studios and the Irish studios and Don Bluth. But you know, we're still out here. We still know how to do it. We're still passing it along, and it's up to you, the generation out there who consumes this stuff, to say that yes, we like this and we want to keep it going, and we still want to do it and still want to learn how to do it in places like CG Spectrum, and then we'll be the ones who pass it on to the next generations. So on that happy note, I think we've come to the end of another live stream. My name is Scott Claus. I've been your host tonight as we worked on 2D animation and talked about it. You guys have been great. I really appreciate those of you who have been chiming in and talking and chatting it up. And I hope to see some of you next time. Like I said, next time I'll be working on the cleanup pass for this, meaning it's going to be done soon and it's going to look really cool. And then I'm going to move into in upcoming weeks, just, you know, I'll be moving into cutout animation, how you do that. I think you'll have a lot of fun with that. And then I've got another scene hand-drawn, prepared, that's going to be kind of action and anime looking, hopefully. And as I've said several times tonight, we've got our friend who's going to be teaching the anime style. Just one more shout out about that. So if you are interested in 2D anime, go to the website and look for that. And I'll continue to talk about that over the weeks until it starts happening. But again, yeah, you guys have been great. Thank you for playing along. Thanks for watching. And I hope to see some of you next week, same time, same place, wherever you happen to be in the world. But that's me signing off for another live stream with CG Spectrum in the 2D department. Have a great rest of your day, rest of the week, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.